we hit our widest intercept to date, and we also hit a new native silver vein. And we never made it to the third target that we were excited about, where we see a lot of the gold and silver mineralization come in, because we decided we had hit such crazy mineralization in the first two targets that we should see where the market sentiment was towards that, because the shift towards Mexico at that time. So we came to market with 9 meters of over 600 grams silver. And at that point, people were more excited about us being in Gryphon for obvious reasons. That's an incredible play.
Lauren Megaw, Reyna Silver. Good afternoon to you, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. And yourself?
Doing
Excited to do this.
fantastic. It's a great time to be in the markets.
It really is. And I think things are looking ahead in a direction where the investments that you make today might be the thing that sets you up for the future.
Well said. I would agree with that. About that, and this is about you, but I'll just tell you about my experience in the past week. We are well in the black in the fund that I help or that I've seeded. And it's really just some of the research we started doing really the last last 12 months. So I would say that to all of my listeners and potential investors, just keep what Lauren just said in mind. The seeds that you're sowing now, the due diligence you're sowing, they'll be paying off, I think, in the next 6 to 36 months. So Lauren, let's start. Tell us about the project, what you got going on. It's interesting that you're both in Nevada and Mexico, two fantastic jurisdictions for mining. Tell me about the flagship project first here. I think that's in Nevada. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. And so Reyna Silver, just to back up, I mean, our objective is going after the things that are high enough grade and big enough that they could really move the needle. Those are the kind of deposits that you can actually do something with, whether that's going into production yourself or the kind of asset that a big company would take out, right?
Right.
And so we think about having a portfolio of assets, because you want to make sure that you're not in a binary situation. You don't make it or break it off of one picture. And that's allowed us to stay nimble, especially because we started off in Mexico and then we've added 2 assets since going public in Nevada. Because let's be real here, a stool is more stable with 4 legs than it is with 2. And that's also allowed us to stay dynamic with the changing sentiment towards Mexico and as it's now coming back. That asset that we focused on for 2024 is our Nevada asset called Gryphon. Gryphon is cool because it is both a silver deposit and a gold deposit. So essentially, gold, silver, critical metals too. To get a little bit more technical, it is a carbonate replacement deposit. So what you typically associate with silver, lead, zinc mineralization, as well as a Carlin type gold deposit. And the idea there is to leverage the 2 styles of mineralization against each other to unlock the full value of the asset, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, consolidated claim package on the Carlin Trend, not controlled by a major. And what we've done in the last year there is we did proof of concept drilling, where we can see that both styles of mineralization are using the same structure, which means we can now use that to begin to unlock what's going on there and unleash that value for investors at Gryphon.
Okay.
That wasn't.
No, that
Go ahead.
was well done. So let me ask what majors, for those that don't know, what majors are in that bulk, what majors are next to you?
Which majors aren't? We're on the Carlin Trend. So, north of us is over 160 million ounces of gold. It's the Nevada Gold Mines Group. So that's the combination Barrick, Newmont, Orla's just north of us. Across the valley from us, just 50 kilometers, is the Cortez camp. So casually 50 million ounces of gold. That's also Nevada Gold Mines. To our south, we have the Eureka District with I-80 Gold. To the southwest, you've Hewen. To the southeast, you've got Kinross. So it's just all these big companies, because that's where some of the biggest gold deposits in the world are. And one of the cool things is that these trends that we now think of, whether it's the Carlin Trend or the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend, we think of those now as being the sites of mega gold deposits. But those trends were actually originally defined by their silver deposits, and in particular, their carbon replacement deposits. And what we've recognized is we can bring one of the most serially successful silver CRD exploration teams in the world up from Mexico, and we can deploy that looking at this area from a new angle, especially because we can now see that that silver mineralization and the gold mineralization we can use against each other. And so the idea there is maybe we find a major CRD deposit, but there's also the extra possibility of this could help us understand the Carlin type gold, which is what everyone's looking for currently in this area within Gryphon itself.
Lauren, can you speak about the Carlin type gold? What does that mean?
So Carlin type gold are these. I'll take a quick step back and I will give you an analogy for both the CRD and the Carlin gold in the same one. Does that work for you guys?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I like to think of deposits as being like cities. And you can think of a carbonate replacement deposit, which is sourced from a porphyry. So what we normally associate with copper, gold, or these monster deposits. I like to think of a CRD deposit as being like a public transportation system, right? So your source porphyry, that is now your bus terminal. And coming off of that is acidic mineralized. And you can think of that as your bus. And that's going to go along structures. And you can think of those as your bus routes, right? And so the bus leaves the terminal, hopefully fully loaded with a bunch of metals. And those metals are going to get off in different neighborhoods. So when you are close to your bus terminal, you are in the downtown area. You can think of that as your scarn. And that's what geologists want to call it, at least. There you're going to have higher copper, gold, zinc mineralization. Your silver grade there is going to be lower, but that's where everything's voluminous. And then you get further out into the system. That gets you to what's called the chimney manto or the massive sulfides. This is what is typically associated with the CRDs. CRDs can be these massive systems if you're in the right part of it, right? If you're in the right suburb and you've got all the good conditions, you could have something like a Taylor Hermosa, right? Which South 32 picked up a couple of years ago for $1.6 billion. That's just one massive suburb, right? That's where we have the high silver, lead, zinc numbers, get some critical metals thrown in there. And then at the very end of the system, the elements that fell asleep on the bus get kicked out. And that gives us our alteration halo. And buses are big and aggressive and they're dramatic. And this mineralization stays pretty close along the bus terminals. But what you want is a system where the bus has left the terminal many times, fully loaded. That's how you get a big deposit, a big city deposit, as it were, right? You can think of Carlin gold systems as being like a bunch of little Ubers, right? It's a little bit more nuanced. You have to see the flashing sign on the front, but they go everywhere. You're still following those same main routes, but the gold is actually depositing both on top of what we call overprinting, where that CRD mineralization was, and then distal from there. So to back up, so the CRD deposits, it's a more aggressive, it's a more high temperature, more acidic solution that's creating it. And that's where you get these big polymetallic deposits. So you get your gold, you get your silver, you get your lead, zinc, copper with good recovery rates because of the style of mineralization. The longer lived the system, the bigger it gets, especially if it's juicy. And then the Carlin deposits operate similarly in terms of you got a bunch of metals going out, but they end up being these huge deposits. They can have areas of high grade where you have the most fluid flow, right? So the closer you are to your main pathways, your main thoroughfares. And in both cases, what you're looking for is the biggest traffic jam you can find. And the things that create traffic jams, interchanges, intersections, things like that, geologically, that's the same thing. And that's why at Gryphon, we think we can use one better understands the other and vice versa. Did that
Yeah.
you
So
dig?
you have a big gold play and a silver play, both in the same area, uh,
Yes.
in your
And
study.
historically, the economics of the CRDs in this part of the world have been really cool because they have high silver, lead, zinc mineralization with this really good gold credit because the gold deposits within the CRD mineralization and then goes distal from there. Um, they are have not been the focus in this area because you've got these massive gold plays that have been the main idea, but that's starting to shift dramatically in Nevada in the last couple of years.
So, there's a lot of questions that just came to my mind and where we can go with this. Really, my first question is, you've had this, well, maybe it's a statement and just let me know if I'm saying this correctly. You've had this then for the past year, starting in 24. Is that correct?
And so we acquired Gryphon in 23, and then we
Okay.
drilled in 24, the
Got it.
first proof of concept drilling program.
Okay. And the reason for those that aren't familiar with the proof of concept showed what, obviously that you can continue, but just work that out a little bit more for me.
Yeah. So one of the big questions we had early on is, are we on the right track that we can use the CRD mineralization where things are more dramatic, um, more aggressive fluid? Can we use that to figure out what's going on with the gold mineralization, which is more nuanced?
Mhm.
And the big question there was, when we intersect a structure that's got CRD mineralization, are we also going to see the associated gold mineralization? Or are they not using the same structures? And what we had in this last drill program is we had both in the same thing. And then the coolest part is it appears that we can see the rock unit that is experiencing how do I put this? The bus route is showing up in the geophysics. So we can see that the rock has been altered. And when we've intersected that alteration, it's lining up with what we're seeing in the geophysics, which means we now have a major tool and we also have scalable targets that are deeper. So we tested this idea shallow because we didn't want to we wanted to be strategic with our use of the shareholder with the
Yeah, I
use of
get
our
it.
capital, right?
Right. Okay.
So now
So yeah, you can go deeper. Pardon me. So I want to talk about then, well, let's talk before I talk about economics, let's talk about what's the plan then for the rest of the quarter, really after the quarter. That's what I'd be most interested in. Take me through 25. What's the plan?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a portfolio of assets. And one of the opportunities that we have is as sentiment towards Mexico has shifted, we've spent the last year and a half sitting up on follow up targets for our Mexican asset, Batopilas. Batopilas is Mexico's highest grade district historically. The main ore mineralization there was silver. And in 21, excuse me, we discovered that we also had gold mineralization and that there was the opportunity, like what we were planning on doing at Gryphon, to leverage the silver and gold against each other. On our first follow up program of that at Batopilas, we hit our widest intercept to date, and we also hit a new native silver vein. And we never made it to the third target that we were excited about, where we see a lot of the gold and silver mineralization come in because we decided we had hit such crazy mineralization in the first two targets that we should see where the market sentiment was towards that, because the shift in towards Mexico at that time. So we came to market with 9 meters of over 600 grams silver. And mm, at that point, people were more excited about us being in Gryphon for obvious reasons. That's an incredible play. But Gryphon does have this thing called snow that happens in the winter. That's a Nevada feature. And one of the beautiful things about having an asset in Mexico is we don't have this thing called snow that we had to deal with in the winter.
Year-round
And on
drilling.
top of that,
Yeah.
we also have significantly cheaper drilling costs. And we recognize the opportunity to not only follow up on these crazy targets we've had to sit on for a year and a half, sentiment towards Mexico shifted back. It's a lot cheaper drilling. And we get to test some of the ideas that we have at Gryphon because we had the same style of gold and silver using the same structures. We can test that at Batopilas. And then we could then potentially scale these ideas. And we think that they're a really good combination, both in terms of continued news flow, proximity to major um, results and potentially discovery, but also from an strategic technical point of view, we can use the two. So to get back to your question, the plan for this spring is to run a drill program at Batopilas, put those pieces together, see if we can follow up on that 9 meters of 600 grams silver. I mean, that's within 30 meters of silver that starts at 3 meters from surface, right? So we have these shallower targets there, major things, as well as follow up on that hit with the native silver.
Lauren, can you talk a little bit about your major shareholders? What percentage is owned by insiders and institutions?
Yeah, so our major shareholders, our biggest shareholder is our CEO, Jorge Ramiro Monroy. He has around seven, around 7.5% of the company currently. Though he in this financing is increasing that position, depending on how much the total raise that we have, that will affect what the end number is, but that will probably put him around 8 to 9%. On top of that, one of our largest shareholders is Sprott, particularly the Natural Resource Fund run by Maria Smirnova, and that's around 1% of the company. We're lucky to have many larger shareholders as well, and two of our original assets, including Batopilas, as well as the other CRD project that we have in Mexico, which is called Gigi. Both came from Mag Silver originally, and so we've had their support.
Got it. Let's talk more about share structure. How many shares do you have outstanding, fully diluted, and where are the warrants and the options at?
Yeah, so I am going to slightly cheat here for a second and pull up that slide so that I can make sure that I have the most accurate information given
Cool.
possible. What I can tell you as I'm pulling that up is we have 222 million shares outstanding in the although we actually recently had some warrants exercised, so we're actually up to 222.9 million. And then our average daily volume is about 260,000. That gives us a market cap of around 27 million. We did a merger of acquisition for the partner company that we had with Gryphon in the fall, and that's where we got ourselves to the 222 million. And then in terms of warrants, we have a series of warrants. You want me to give them out by time or just total number?
If you give it the total number of the strike, if you can that.
Yeah, so probably the biggest set of warrants that we have is at 20 cents, and that's 38.4 million in total. If all the warrants were exercised, there's a series from 12, 24, 16, 20, 30, and 40. We would have 22 million Canadian coming in from that warrant exercise. And there's about $4 million worth of options as well.
Okay. Excellent. Steve, what else do you have? Anything else that you can think of?
Well, if someone wants to invest or has any questions, how do we get a hold of you? Can you give a website? Can you provide a tickers?
Yeah. Please find us at reynasilver.com. On top of that, we are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter X. And then on top of that, please feel free to reach out to info@reynasilver.com. And our tickers are RSLV on the TSXV and the RSNV on the OTCQX. Cool.
Excellent. Oh, one last question. Do
Yes.
we have any imminent news in the next few months or few weeks that you can discuss, or should investors just keep their ears open?
Well, as always, keep your ears open. The biggest news will be probably coming out of the big work that we did this year at Gryphon. So, in tandem with all of the drilling program, we were also running big sampling and structural studies as well. So, that will be coming out, talking about the exciting targets that are coming up next there. And then, of course, launching hopefully the drilling program at the Batopilas this spring.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'd love to have you on again to hear all about the successes that are going to happen and the news that's going to be hitting throughout this year. So I just want to thank you for coming on.